Hello and welcome to this CNBC Africa special broadcast. My name is Tanya Habimano and we are joining you here in Sandton Convention Centre in Johannesburg. Now, as 2021 came to an end, we saw the business events industry see what looks like a glimpse of light in what has been a hard and long COVID-19 period. With several in-person, hybrid, and exhibitions booked, we're here to look at exactly how the business events industry is progressing on the African continent and find out exactly what we can do to make sure that we not only optimize, but maximize on the opportunities that the business events opportunities exist. So here, joining me here today, we have my panelists. I'm joined by Kwache Donkor, who is the CEO of the Africa Tourism Partners. We also have Desiree Baltussen, the Chief Business Development Officer at ICA. And we are also joined by Nicanor Sabula, Managing Director at the African Association Management Companies. Welcome to this panel. So diving into the discussion, as I mentioned, we saw 18 months, 2 years of COVID-19 pandemic where this industry really took a diving. And I want to start with you, Desiree. So you obviously have a good global overview of what's been happening. Where are we exactly on the road to recovery?
Yeah, indeed, it has been almost 2 years now, and I'm so pleased to be here and see that we're all gathering again. The first industry event started in January globally again. And I attended that one. It was in Vegas, and it was unreal to actually be there among so many people, still wearing the masks, but otherwise it felt almost like back to normal. So that for me was a very good start of this new year. And we saw a lot of relaxations happening also, governments relaxing the entry measurements. I'm based in Europe. I'm headquartered in Amsterdam for the International Congress and Conventions Association, ICA. And we saw that our neighboring countries were starting to relax regulations. So Denmark, UK, Spain, and now finally ourselves as well. So hopefully there's other challenges now in Europe, as you know, so that we are a little bit taken aback by that as well. So now we have to again make a new analysis and see how we, stay resilient.
Exactly.
Yes.
And Kwache, from your perspective, on the continent, where are we currently? Paint us a picture of the current business events landscape.
I think similar to the global landscape, the sector has been seriously affected all over the show and across the entire value chain. The good thing is that it's made the rest of Africa, or the whole continent rather, realize that there are huge opportunities across the continent that we haven't tapped into. And the reason for that is we've been, I'll call it, gallivanting around the world looking for business to bring onto to the continent rather. But now the COVID pandemic has taught us that if we work together, we look across one country to the other, there are so many opportunities. And a good example is from associations perspective. Desiree may guide me, but there are thousands and thousands of associations from across the continent, born and bred on the continent. And the opportunities that these associations present have never been touched. So sitting back and basically rethinking the way forward, we've all realized that we can actually hunt in our own backyards. So that is one. The second opportunity is that we also realize that if we collaborate, and I mean, I would say the term collaboration or the word collaboration has been overused, and I would say it has been abused. But the reality is that COVID has taught us that we can really collaborate. And on the MICE or business events side, countries are now realizing that they can share insights about which events can be hosted, which events have been hosted by others that could possibly lead, and the knowledge and the insight of bidding and hosting could be passed on to other countries so that we keep them on the continent. So that is another important thing. The third one would be, as I mentioned to you earlier, human development and human capital development. Whatever skills that we had prior to COVID, I wouldn't say it's obsolete, but needs to be refreshed. We all need to be retrained, not just on protocols, but also on our approach to sales, our approach to business development, our approach to engagement. And this, I see that as an opportunity. And the final point on that is we also realize that there is a need for us to start looking at succession planning among the young people that are up and coming, because a lot of the people in the industry possibly have left the industry. We need to recalibrate and bring a lot of people back. There is need for innovation, and as I said yesterday during our master class, innovation basically is driven by the young people. So these are some of the key lessons, and I see them as huge opportunities that particularly in Africa we could tap into. Looking at a population of about 1.3 billion, if we could even get 1% of that into the mainstream mines industry, the continent will be self-sufficient.
Wow,
So,
those are
right.
quite some points. And I really like your point on we don't have to go out looking globally. We can already start with what we have here, and particularly with the associations. And that's where I want to bring my next question to Nicanor. Paint us a picture. What role do the associations play when it comes to the business events industry on the continent?
Thank you very much. I think definitely we see associations as playing the role of bridging, the conversations, but also really bringing to life the meetings into the continent. But perhaps before I speak more about that, and just in response to the question you raised around how we see the space evolving, as predicted by experts, we've seen the recovery of the MICE, and probably the tourism events takes a very predictable path of saying we'll recover from a local perspective, and then the domestic perspective, and then move into the regional and then Pan-African before we can come to full recovery at an international level. And the beauty is that we see associations crafted in those very, very formats. We've got very local associations that deal with the local issues, and for most of those, they've managed to keep their activities going. And then we've seen the regional ones begin again to have conversation, to bring together discussions around regional issues. And we're here at a Pan-Africa level, and happy to say that we have the confidence of saying we can travel and come to South Africa to meet with our colleagues in the industry. And perhaps by the time we begin to recover at an international level, it may take time. So that tells you at the very core of the recovery process of our MICE industry lies the associations. And why do I say that? Associations basically are a grouping of people or entities of common dreams and common visions. And for us then to be able to bring people together, no one does that better than associations. And so associations is the first vehicle that is going to congregate and bring people together. And then the next question is, these people are coming to do what? And now that's where the conversation about the socio-economic development of the continent begins to come. We are here to talk about the recovery of our industry. And another association, maybe in agriculture, is talking about how do we feed, Africans. And there'll be another association, probably in the medical space, to come and share what role are we going to play in ensure that as a continent we recover from this pandemic. Definitely there are good lessons to be learned here in South Africa in terms of how they've handled the pandemic. I foresee scientific and health conferences coming here to say, as Africa, can we learn from each other in terms of how we move forward in this campaign. So you can see the central role that associations actually are going to play in this recovery journey.
And Desiree, on that note, actually, because I'm understanding the business case for associations in relation to MICE and business events. From a global perspective, what other best practices have you seen in terms of, let's say, capacitating the industry?
Well, Ecoise is a global association that provides services to every party involved in association business, like in the meetings industry. So it's the suppliers, it's the PCOs, it's the venues, but we also opened up to the associations as a community. We've got a large database, so we've got all the information about all the international associations that travel all the continents globally. But now we recently also opened up so that they can have their own platform and share their own challenges and solutions and so with each other. So what we did is we wanted to investigate if what the associations want and need is in line with what the suppliers are offering. So we did a study and we surveyed 80 associations on their most important needs, how they would like to be received by destinations that are hosting conferences. And the funny thing is that we saw an incredible discrepancy. There was a real gap in what the associations want and what the destinations were offering. Like as a destination, you want to show off, wow, this is our destination, this is what you can do, this is what it looked like, it's fantastic. And the associations now are, yes, they want to come to a beautiful destination, but specifically, as you also mentioned, they want to also dive into their specific topic. And they want to leave a legacy. They want to connect with the associations on site and with the medical parties on site and the trade associations. I mean, there's so many different associations, so many different topics where they can connect. So it's also the brain power, the exchange of knowledge that needs to happen. Yes, the meetings have a huge economical spin-off. If you look at it worldwide, it goes into the trillions. But so, yes, that's very important for the African continent to also get that economical spin-off. But what the associations really want is leaving a legacy and a DEI. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and also have sustainability, sustainable conferences, and that is reflected throughout everything in the total value chain, so to speak, what is being offered by the destination. So that is one of the main learnings that we found, and I think if the destinations take that into consideration, then there's way more cross-fertilization possible, especially on a knowledge level.
Yeah.
Because then you get really the parties together and the full enhancement of new ideas and even filtering it out to potential new businesses. The growth is endless, so to speak, especially on this continent.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
We have like 1,100 members. Say 500 are based in Europe. We're globally represented. We're in Asia Pacific. We're in the Middle East. We're in North and Latin America, and also in Africa. And Africa is 4%. Why is that?
Exactly.
4%.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what it's incredible room for growth there is on this continent for associations to discover.
And I'm quite surprised. I wasn't expecting this as your answer, actually.
Okay.
But it actually speaks to what you were speaking just now, Kwate, when you were talking about human capital development and innovation, and how it's not just about positioning the destination as a destination, but also looking at who are the people that we have, who are the brain resources that we have, how can we create meaningful exchanges?
Exactly.
And on that note, I don't know if it's an easy question or not, but do we have, let me phrase my question correctly, are we ready for this type of exchange?
Yeah, I mean, we are, but I think there hasn't been a deliberate and intentional effort from both the private and the public sector to drive this industry aggressively, the way it's supposed to be driven. And the reason is very simple. It's lack of understanding of what the industry is. people appreciating the value of the industry. And I think and that is where the challenge. But there has been efforts to address and resolve these kind of challenges to get a better understanding right across policymakers to the private sector. There are two, if we look at the value chain, we can just break it into two. One of them is the policymaker who or has to create an enabling environment for the industry to thrive. And if that particular policymaker or policymakers do not understand the industry itself, it will be very difficult for them to put measures or policies, instruments in place to help drive the industry to thrive. The other side is the private sector. And let's be very honest, in the sector has been reserved and preserved for a privileged field because lack of understanding, we lack the knowledge about the sector because we don't know the value, we don't know what is there for us. So a lot of initiatives, and I think one of them is Meetings Africa itself. When it started, this is the first meeting, business events, whether we call it trade fair, trade show on the continent. And we got 54 countries on the continent, and we got only one in Africa, and South Africa has been pushing. The numbers here still needs to be grown, need to be increased, but education is important. So if we get people to understand the value and what it brings and its contribution to the continent and to the societies within the continent, then the whole dynamics about it is going to change. So to respond to your question, yes, we are ready, but we need to do a lot more, and we need to be more aggressive, and we need to be more intentional about it. So Meetings Africa, I believe that is one of the ways in helping the continent and the industry across the continent to basically appreciate and help reshape our understanding. The second point is the little bit that we've been doing. Desiree was part of the session. 5 years ago, we felt that how do we capacitate? How do we get people to appreciate understanding? It's about education. So we started this Africa Minds Masterclass, and right from day one, ICA has been very supportive. SAT, a couple of people across the continent, where we meet once a year and say, let's share knowledge. What are the trends? What does the industry entail? How do people start to understand what is MICE? What is business events? And I think we are making some traction, but there's still a long way to go. Because the truth is, it's a debate that is out there, and there are so many schools of thoughts. People are saying business events is part of tourism. You can also argue that business events is bigger than tourism. And I was having that conversation with someone this morning. And my point is that business events is one of the sectors, although tourism does the same, that touches every single sector of the economy. Yep. From someone who deals with bees, to medical sciences, to economics, to agriculture, to mining, everything. Mm-hmm. And those are the key economic sectors you can look at it. Then it comes to the tourism side, accommodation, travel, food, catering, entertainment, arts and culture, everything. Yeah. So the sector is huge. As he said, it goes into trillions of, as if you look at the value of dollars. But until we get each and every one to rally behind it and to prove a case that this is a sector that needs to be looked after, we'll be struggling. And I believe that is where South Africa tourism is one of the, if you were asking of case studies, it's one of the case studies that we are encouraging the rest of the continent to be able to learn from. We do strategies, we meet people across the continent, but sometimes you meet a whole lot of policymakers, from ministers to business level, and they don't have appreciation for the industry. So that is what. But another important point that also on our side, how do we argue our case? It's all based on the numbers. Are we doing enough to put the numbers on the table to tell South Africa, if South Africa has done it, say this is what the industry brings. And it's not just about money, it's about knowledge, it's about research, it's about development, it's about innovation that I spoke about. So long as we start, capturing, when we start capturing this and packaging them and presenting to our leaders and principals and showing them the value that it brings beyond economics, then they will give whatever support that we need. So back to your answer, we are ready, but there got to be deliberate, intentional effort to drive it. There got to be leadership. And I think South Africa has taken that leadership. We expect and we look forward to the rest of the continents to take the same challenge. Individual countries, there must be leaders championing this cause. And I think that is something that we have to collaborate and push for. Once we got the leaders and we're intentional about it, I'm very sure that the change will happen. Thank you.
Deja, I see you nodding.
I
Please
just would like to
add
add
to
a little
this.
bit. Yeah, I came for the first time in 2001 to the African continent and helped with the startup of the Cape Town Convention Center. But also at the same time, the Convention and Visitors Bureau was started up, and it's a long time ago. And hence, in that time, we saw the development happening though, gradually. So also East Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, now we see West Africa coming up. So for me it's very exciting. It takes some time, but that's where it all starts. So if you have more clusters now where there is a proper Convention and Visitors Bureau who knows everything about the mice industry, that's a really good start in a destination. So what we hope to see is that more CVBs and CBs, Convention Bureaus, will pop up over the continent, and they can be the starting engines of promoting the mice industry regionally. So I see the growth. I see it within our association. So and every time we're so excited when we get new members on board, of course, because you know this is going to catapult. And what would be really great to see, and that's also that you see elsewhere globally, say the Best Cities Alliance. That's an example. If that could be like an alliance of CVBs on the African continent, exchanging even their businesses, you know, the conferences that already took place in destination in South Africa can of course take place in Rwanda as well, right? So and you've got the knowledge then, you really know how to bid for it and what they are looking for. So if that exchange starts to happen, then I'm sure way more business will arrive.
And that's quite interesting the way you position it, because it almost mirrors what Nicanor was talking about in terms of the associations and how they're set up, where you would have an association in South Africa, an association in Mozambique, an association in Namibia, and then they would have regional integration, which then could potentially go on to a Pan-African perspective. But I want to touch on, from your perspective, Nicanor, what are some of the barriers that you've seen in terms of the business events industry from the association's perspective?
Thank you, Tanya, for that question. And I think we need to go back and look at what are some of the enabling environments that Kwachi was talking about that allows the MICE, the business events, to thrive on the continent. I must thank thought leaders like the South Africa Tourism that decided to start these conversations on Meetings of Africa. They will have been selfish and say we just want to focus on South Africa. They've opened up to the entire continent. I think we gotta give that to them because it's a kind of thought leadership that inspires. And out of this, I can tell you we are seeing the evolution of other conversations around creating opportunities like this that allows other Africans to come in different parts of the continent to experience, what those destinations have to offer in terms of the MICE industry. And slowly you'll then begin to see smaller hubs emerge across the continent, and that's the way to go. So my appeal would be, who else want to join South Africa in providing that thought leadership across the continent? Then to be able to look at this, once the interest goes, I think we also need to accompany that with infrastructural development. We need infrastructure that enables meetings to happen. We've talked about the venues themselves. I think we need to be able to build international venues that are able to attract international meetings. Unfortunately, we see across the continent, beautiful destination, everything, but the infrastructure in terms of capacity, the venues, the roads, the connectivity into that destination is a challenge. So in as much as we are calling for more meetings to come into Africa, we must also be able to work on that infrastructure that accompanies that particular growth. Leslie has she's talked about the convention bureaus. Beautiful way to be able to then refocus the conversations around the meeting, the meeting space. So that's very important. But much bigger, I think we need to look at interconnectivity on the continent. It is so unfortunate that probably prior to pandemic, about 30% of intra-Africa traffic was actually coming from outside of Africa. You know what that means? Is that if I want to connect into a destination, maybe in Burkina Faso, I'll have to fly all the way to Charles de Gaulle, probably, most likely, and then be able to come back to the continent. This is the 21st century, really, and we are still doing that. I think we need to do better in terms of creating that infrastructure that allows connectivity, within the continent. So it's easier for us as Africans to move across the continent to engage in these MICE activities. And the other thing then we need to look at is, and I think we've been speaking about the desire to ease the movement of persons. Other than that air connectivity, and I think there's quite some efforts to do roads and rails, we also need to look at how do we create a common African passport that allows me as a Kenyan to be able to just travel anywhere within the continent without much restriction, right? It's still very expensive to move within the continent in terms of visa fees, in terms of the hurdles that have been put in place to allow us to move. And yet, when we make it easier to be able to move around, that's how we are going to trade. That's how we are going to make our services and goods to cross the continent. So we need to look at those as some of the opportunities. Now, so that's one of the things that actually hinders us, in terms of expanding and growing. And then finally, let me speak about some of the opportunities that I see. We are aware of the African Continental Free Trade Area that just came into place the other day. And I haven't seen much excitement from colleagues in the meetings industry about this. Listen, we are talking about creating a single African market for our goods and services on the continent. Which other vehicle do we need to be able to promote our MICE our MICE opportunities on the continent? So I hope we can be able to jump into that act proactively and be able to push, for the attainment and the realization of that Africa Continental Free Trade Area that will tap a lot of opportunities for us in the association space, but also to be able to promote intra-Africa trade in goods and services. So those are some of the areas that I see as huge opportunities, and associations must sit in the driver's seat to be able to unlock those opportunities in those frameworks.
Absolutely. Some very strong points coming there from this panel. We'll now take a short break, and after the break, we'll be joined by a fourth panelist joining us from the South African National Convention Bureau. We'll see you shortly. And welcome back to the CNBC Africa special broadcast. We have a fourth panelist that has joined us right now. Amanda, welcome to the panel. So Amanda Kotse Nhlapo is the Chief Convention Bureau Officer at the South Africa National Convention Bureau. So we've just had a very interesting discussion where we've talked about what the pandemic has done to the business events industry, but also we started to talk about some of the opportunities that exist uniquely to the African landscape. Now, what I'd love to hear from your perspective, and your bureau has come up quite a lot in the conversation already as a best practice, what are some of the tools and platforms that you've seen work successfully in South Africa?
So I will have to be, taking Meetings Africa, that opportunity to say, platforms like these, that I think that we can come together as Africa. Because in our sector, and I'm sure everyone said it already, cooperation, I call it co-opetition. Because whilst we're in competition, we also are in cooperation, Why am I saying that? Because our meetings can rotate around, around the continent. And so if we assist each other, so, that is one of the things that I definitely think. And then, of course, the other one is that, we need to build on our brand together, Go out there together and tell the world that Africa is ready and that we can host of the best events that you can, and unique events that you can actually experience. I keep on making a joke about it to say, before we would say that come and have your meeting under a tree, it's a unique whilst the elephants or whoever is, or whatever is passing you. And now it's essential, that we actually have those open spaces, a unique way of doing meetings. And I think Africa is absolutely, rightly there to be able to do that. Of course, one of the tools is bidding. And again, it is a collaborative, effort for us to go out there and bid for these big events. People can do their post tours or post events, and I think it's something that we as a continent, the opportunity now is continent to continent, country to country on the continent, It isn't about, Europe forever, and I know that Desiree is here from ICA, and I always say that it's actually an unfair competition, because with Europe you can really go with a bicycle from one country to another. It's not possible in Africa, And so it is that culture of us working together and rotating our meetings, so that we can build the knowledge economy on the continent.
Thank you. And I want to leverage on what Amanda just said. When we look at the continent, when we look at the individual countries, the regions, how can we better collaborate? I know that you've worked on a few initiatives from a Pan-African perspective. Maybe you can run us through some of the successes that you've had.
I think one of them basically is what Desiree spoke about, and Amanda and I have been championing it since 2000. It's 5 years now. We made some progress, and COVID, unfortunately, we had to sit back and rethink. But basically, the alliance that we are talking about, whatever term that we may call it, 2019, I think we had about 7 countries that were interested in collaborating and working together to make sure that the convention bureaus that currently exist work together. And what I like about it was the initial idea Amanda and I discussed. Then as part of the process, we'll have a hand-holding kind of approach. So those countries that don't have the capacity, that do not have the skills, could learn from the ones that are established like South Africa. And I must tell you that since we had that, we started a master class with Amanda and a few colleagues. Even the countries that don't have convention bureaus, although they say they have, we know that it's not up to where it is, but the aspiration and the intention is there, which we do appreciate. If you go there now, you have Ghana, you have Mozambique, you have Mauritius, you have Zambia, you have Zimbabwe, and all these countries. Amanda, by the way, Namibia was here also just to see what is happening because of the engagement that we have in Kenya. Last year had a national convention bureau, which they didn't. Last year when we had a master class, there were about 100 from Uganda who tuned in virtually.
Wow.
So there has been a lot of successes. That is from capacity and coaching and mentoring. But on the other side also, from the work that South Africa has done, a lot of the countries are doing that as well. There's a lot of homegrown events that are coming up. One that comes to mind, and I'll go to Ghana, is this young event that they call the Afrochella. It's part of Ghana on the back of what they've learned from South Africa and other countries. They had a year of return, which was very successful. And if you look at all the other countries that we are looking at, in tourism space, countries are fighting to host what you call the UNWTO Commission for Africa conference. It's a very big thing for countries to host. So I think those are some of the good lessons and successes I would say that countries have learned, particularly from South Africa. South Africa is also learning from others. The fact that South Africa is a leader doesn't mean they don't learn from others. They also learn some of the areas that possibly they might not have potential for. Then another success, yesterday, if you were here, I see that's very successful because for me, every time I see youth being part of a program and small enterprise development being part of a program, because that's where the future lies. And I know that South Africa, for instance, has got a program with ECA, with the Future Leaders Program.
Yep.
And yesterday in our master class, you have about at least not less than 50 young people being part of the process. And those part are the successes. On my side, personally, we've done, Amanda was with me, and I think a couple of colleagues, we did 2 master classes in Tanzania, where we went there to train the industry about what the mines is about. Yesterday, Nico and I were talking that we possibly have to do something in Kenya. We delivered in Ghana about 2, and Namibia wants to seriously compete. So they might be small little things, but to get to the big goal, you have to start with small little things. But the biggest of them, and if we could achieve that, is to have this alliance going. The intention is there, the vision is there, the aspiration is there. We just have to push. The protocols, the policy issues, the challenges that Nicanor talked about, they are always going to be there. They are always going to be there. But one thing that we must realize is that the flight, the infrastructure are still critical. But what are the strengths that we can play to? Sustainability is a critical component of every business event now. And the most sustainable continent on earth is Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As Amanda said, you can have the meetings on trees, you can have on river banks, you can have with local community. You know, so I agree we have challenges, but their potentials, those pockets of excellence could be leveraged, and we can see countries leveraging them. And I believe that there are a lot of successes. They are countless. One thing the media that I will kindly urge, is that a lot of the time, I know it's about sensationality, it's about business. The more the sensational the story is, the more it sells. But if we go to storytelling, Africa has got more stories to tell to the world than anything.
Absolutely.
Than any other continent. And I believe that those are also big stories that we can push as pockets of excellence and propel the industry. So I hope that responds to your question.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to the topic of storytelling and how we can use Africa as the story that we're selling in attracting business events to us. But Desiree, I want to go back to the note that the point that Amanda made.
Can I
Oh,
please
you want to
just
go
one little
for it?
comment?
Absolutely.
Because I can't agree more to what you're saying.
Thank you.
The huge opportunity lies in personalizing these stories and personalizing the context. Big role, of course, is there for the African associations, the African association executives, to put them forward as ambassadors for the continent. And, you know, just voice this and then be the contact person, of course, to the international association to get the business in. And I think these personal contacts should not be overlooked. And yeah, you've got all the ingredients here to make it so magnificent. Okay, but you wanted to ask something
No,
else.
that was fantastic. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to ask you is, when we talk about issues such as mobility, where we can't deny the fact that it can become cumbersome, especially if you compare it to a market such as Europe, when you compare it to the United States, where you can easily go from one place to another.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, we have come out of a pandemic which has driven a lot of conferences, events, business meetings into a hybrid, a digital world. What has been the impact, and what from that era can we keep that would help benefit the African continent?
Okay, for the African continent, yeah. I'm looking a little bit also globally, like from a bigger picture. I mean, business events, say, are the solution, you know, to recovery. this still has to be explained to governments wherever they are. So also in Africa, but also, doesn't matter where they are. What is the mice industry? And they still don't seem to make the distinction, It's like events are events, so it's a festival, it's a big thing where people get together, and there you get COVID there, So, so that is another sort of white paper that we released as well. But just that for our association, the advocacy, and also for the other associations, to explain over and over again how important these business events are, in so many different fields. Yes, for economical spin-off, that's very obvious, but also for this knowledge exchange and to grow these communities and, taking into consideration all these important ingredients. So. And I think it's similar for Africa than for all other destinations at the moment, because COVID was everywhere, and but they could make some exemptions for, like, business travelers. There could be other. Well, you're talking about the African passport, but there could be relaxation of measurements and requirements for conference delegates, of course, visiting countries, and many other options could be thought of, but maybe one of the others could maybe tune into Africa.
I think for me, so there's two things. The first one I will say is that if there's one sector that never stopped, it was the meeting sector. We just stopped we just continue in a different format. And that is, and I want to link with what Desiree was saying, that is the importance, and I'm sure you also said it, Nicole, already, but the importance of meetings is not about numbers. It's not about numbers, it's about the content. It's about the solution. It's about the knowledge economy. So it is important, if you think of how many meetings we went from the room into the Zoom, we want to go back from the Zoom into the room now. But the fact of the matter is that it's a tool that can help people to come up with new ideas, innovation, solutions. And I just want to say that hybrid, it's not a right or a wrong. I think what it is that we need to look at the opportunity to broaden, but not to make it we don't want virtual events only. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if you look at statistics, it says that people that are in a room have 7 times more ideas than when you are on a Zoom. And we all know that. We can't get them anyway involved,
True.
They are behind black boxes or, squares, and if you say switch on your camera, then no one's hair is, the do is not right, But I just think that we need to look at that on how can we broaden, but not to replace. And that for me is the big thing, because we need for people to be together to come up with those innovative ideas. It isn't definitely not. The one thing that cannot be organically happen is networking on a Zoom call, or on a hybrid meeting. You need those people that are in the room has a much better experience than the ones on the, on the Zoom. We give them too much airtime. But so I think that is it's really important. That there's not a right or a wrong, but we need to find that balance. And I can just maybe share that as the South African National Convention Bureau, we had to look at our methodology to support events and actually have a methodology on how much do we actually support them with, when they have a hybrid component. And relax, as you say, Desiree, relax a little bit that, that support so that we can have successful events. And we also see now that events are much smaller, and that's also okay because it's about the content. If we can get that on that sector that come together and have those conversations and what the measurement is of that outcome. Sometimes it's a big investment that come out of a conversation like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicono, I see you nodding.
Yeah. So I think I want to agree with what my colleagues are saying. And how we choose to look at it really is the hybrid has not, we don't see it as having come in place of the meeting, but rather in addition to, the offering that we have. And one of the beauties we see it, I think, from an association perspective is we have now an opportunity to tap in resources that previously we found very rare, So you've got this great speaker that you want to bring into the meeting, but he's so busy, he's unavailable. Nowadays, it's easier to just connect him via Zoom, and people in the room won't look at him and wonder. Before you will play a recorded video into a room, and people are like, "Are we just watching?" It was. Are we watching TV? But now that has become a reality. You can zoom in a guy, and he's a great resource into a meeting. Probably you're getting him at a fair, a cost in terms of that. But also, instead of them missing out completely into your conversation, you can bring them in. So, for us, it's not a question of instead of. It's a question in addition, to. And so we see that continuing. We will continue to tap into that. I know also there are opportunities that people have wanted to attend association meetings, but for one reason or the other, they are unable. Like now we had a colleague of ours that was meant to be here, but when they went to do their COVID test, they were told, sorry, you can't travel, So how do you get that person to continue to participate in the conversation? That opportunity is available through the hybrid, context. So I don't see that going. That is going to be there. But as Amanda correctly put, a lot of association deals that I have made in my time, during these meetings has been done over a cocktail and not in a room like this. An opportunity that unfortunately the Zoom situation can't afford me to. Yeah. So I think the in-person is still going to be the key driver for this, but the technology has availed us with another opportunity to ensure that there's continuity and engagement. That's how we look at it.
Yeah.
Quite, I see you.
Yeah, I think there is a point that you raised, and Nick not touched on it, and I think it needs to be a bit unpacked. That was the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And asking if they are part of this. Nick, you were not in the room yesterday. And that is one I would say, we haven't done anything yet, but I believe it's a success. We managed to get them here yesterday. So they explain exactly what the content, what it's about, because it's a big elephant in the room, and a lot of people didn't know what it entails. How does the business events sector benefit from that? And yesterday the full detail was unpacked. And I met with them this morning and see how best we mainstream the business event as part of the key deliverables they may have to look into. And the advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is you can be anywhere in Africa. Those countries that have ratified the agreement, you can work in any of those countries. And some of the barriers is not just about only mobility. It's not only about connectivity. There are also barriers in terms of taxes, because that could be a very big problem. Some countries have got VAT of up to about 18%. So if you're a PCO and you are going to go, automatically it takes 18% off the budget of your client. So with this kind of policies, if they are in place, it will help to make things easier as much as the cost. And as Amanda said, it's always been about economics, but it's beyond economics. Because if I bring an event, even if I don't charge, and I have 10, 20 people there will be at least 2 people that will be employed at that particular time. It's not about just people having the knowledge, the research that might take place may possibly generate in future 10 times fold the money, the room, accommodation, and arrivals and that the country might be expecting. So with the Continental Free Trade Area, there are a lot of these opportunities could be harnessed, which I think in the past we haven't looked at that. But to add to what Amanda is saying, and it's unfortunate that we don't have the whole house here, that particular point needs to be driven home. It's not about the rooms. It's not about how many people on arrival. We got to look into the future. What value can this conference unlock? So we have to start engaging our tourism boards and engage them and say, guys, when the conference is coming, don't just look at how many people are coming before you support it.
Yeah.
But if that association meeting takes place here, 10 years down the line, it could create tenfold the jobs or the money that we are looking for. And I think that is a point that we need to drive home. And with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, this could be a huge opportunity that need to be explored. Thank you. I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding that. It's a great point. And Desiree?
There's a large role there for the government, of course. It depends where, like the national tourism boards, often the CVB belongs to the national tourism boards. If you're lucky, it's part of economic departments of governments. They have quite some money. There is a lot of financial opportunities there. So if the lobby is correct, and also there are different tools that can be set up, say a pre-financing and guarantee fund for organizers coming into the country wanting to organize a conference. So you get money in advance, but you also can get a guarantee if the number of delegates is less than was expected. You still get a large percentage of your investment in return. So it's taking away the barriers and the difficulties for even going somewhere. If the government is prepared to invest in that and make it way more easier with different type of tools, then that could change a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. We're going to take closing comments. And I'm going to start with you, Kwache. If you can tell me, what are your key takeaways? And I want to actually ask you specifically, in your opinion, how can we unlock the maximum potential?
I think it's pretty straightforward, although it's going to be a long journey. The program of what Amanda said, competition, collaboration, if we could get this body or association, or I'll call it a union, going, that will resolve a lot of the issues, because you will get this particular situation feeding into the countries, the knowledge that they are earning from their colleagues, to the level where it could get to their principal, for their principals to appreciate the value of the industry. So that is, to me, is extremely important. And I'll go back to my first point again. The second point, capacity building and human development. People need to be trained. They need to be taught. They need to be educated about the industry, and we should be able to be competitive, because we are talking of Africa. If one country is better than the other, even within the continent, or in South Africa where we've got 9 provinces, if one province has got the right capacity, the right resources to deliver, I would take my conference or my meetings to that particular province instead of the one that may not have the capacity to host me. So that is a very important point for me. And coming back, I'll be repeating this Amanda's point. We got to understand it's not just about the numbers. It's about the content.
Yeah.
It's about the purpose of that particular gathering. And I think if we start to get these things right, we will make a very big progress into the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think you've summarized quite a few of the points. So we'll just take in one sentence closing remarks. Desiree?
Yeah, then I would say, like, for all the parties that are involved in the mice industry, like, to tune into each other, really listen well, like, what are your needs? What can we deliver? Where is the discrepancy? There are gaps still. So the only way is openly talk about it and really tune in, really listen. Don't just presume, like, oh, this is what they want. And, then the offering will be...
Fantastic. Thank you. Nicanor?
I think for me, we reckon that associations are honestly punching below their weight. I think they can do more. They have huge opportunity on the continent, and so we need to invest a little bit more in strengthening their capacity, in strengthening their ability, in raising awareness about the key place and the important place they play in the revolutionizing of the the business events industry in Africa. So that has been a collaborative effort that we have to do together to be able to then use these associations as an engine, to a stronger mice market on the continent.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Amanda?
Yeah, I concur with everything. I think for me, it is really seeing the opportunity and work, use it as a catalyst. Business events is a catalyst for so many other things, It's an advocacy program, all by itself, you know, and it could be to governments, it could be to business. And I think the important thing is that, you know, capacity building is extremely important, but also turn your challenges into opportunities. That for me is the opportunity of Africa.
Absolutely love it. And my key takeaway, business events in Africa, opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. This was a CNBC Africa special broadcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.